Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Queer Creatives on Rise, formerly known as Rise Market Live. I am Marie Dementh. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am so excited to be joined today by the one and only Darci McFarland of PTSFeminist. Darci, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be able to sit down and talk with you. I'm really excited to talk more about your work. Especially with our local connection to the lovely little D of Denton. Some fun things to talk about and reflect on in that way. But yeah, I'm really excited to learn a whole lot more about your work and how you got involved with Rise Market. So before we get started, could you share your pronouns with us, please?
Absolutely. She, they pronouns are great for me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So PTS Feminist. We obviously, and when you spell out the acronym, it's post-traumatic stress feminist. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's post-traumatically stressed feminist. So
Thank you.
it is the title of my first collection of work.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. So you also have, and amongst your many accolades, you are also the editor of Bible Belt Queers, right?
Yeah, that was my second collection.
Ah, okay, awesome. So, can you talk a little bit about how you got into this particular craft, what led you to it, and things that well, maybe talk a little bit rather about also the story behind both of those works.
Sure, yeah. I got into writing. I've always been writing, really. But my graduate degree in Denton was in multicultural women and gender studies. And once I finally wrapped all of that up, I had the time and energy to put into creating the collections that I really wanted and needed to see when I was growing up. So I knew these were like in my mind that these were going to be collections of work, so I was going to contain work from lots of different perspectives. That was really important for me. So yeah, I just jumped right into it after grad school, even though I've always been writing. But once I finally had the free time to write and really devote to making these collections come alive, I just like dove in and went for it. And the first one was Post-Traumatically Stressed Feminist. It was published in 2017 in December, and it contains the work of 32 feminist artists and activists about their lives with PTSD. So they explored the trauma in their lives. It is a full color collection, and it has visual art and essays and poetry, and it talks about all different types of trauma from 32 different perspectives. And it took about 2 years to finish and put together. It was a self-published collection, so I also fundraised for the money to put this collection together and also provide free copies to all of the contributors who submitted something. So that
Wow.
was really important for me as well. So you can get it on my website, but it has like all different types of full color visual art. I'll show you one of my favorites because she's actually a really great friend of mine now. So I met lots of wonderful survivors who I still keep in touch with and
Wow.
collaborate with. And this painting, she does
Yes.
painting. It says "Women don't owe you shit." And
Snap, snap, snaps.
yeah, so she does a lot of really great work like this, but that's just like one of the really vibrant, beautiful pieces in this collection.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was my firstborn. And then I jumped into Bible Belt Queers after that because in a similar vein, it was something that I really needed when I was younger and didn't see growing up as a queer person in
Right.
rural Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
I had to leave to even get my graduate degree in women's
Right.
studies because there was no even undergraduate degree in women's studies in Arkansas at that point in
Wow.
time. So I had to, go to North Texas to finish that. But yeah, Bible Belt Queers happened after that. And it really was going to be very similar to Post-Traumatically Stressed Feminist and like the size of it. So this one
Right.
was only ended up being about 105 pages. And when I put the call out for submissions for Bible Belt Queers, I was blown away really by the number of submissions I got and the quality of the submissions. and just the range of work that people wanted to contribute. So it ended up being twice as long. So
That's
it is a
crazy.
really substantial collection. This work is also
Oh yeah.
available on my website. And in the same vein, it has lots of full color visual art and poems and essays. So a variety of different types of work from 78 perspectives.
Wow.
So yeah, it turned out to be a really beautiful collection, but a lot more than I anticipated. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Sounds like it was definitely obviously it was worth the effort. But definitely not without any substantial amount of effort indeed to put those two pieces together.
Yeah.
Um and they are very gorgeous. I've had a chance to flip through online and I'm very, just it's you kind of touched on it earlier. It is a rarity for our community to be able to find one another, much
Yeah.
less document it in a way that is, you know, um, like a time capsule or even textually based. And that's part of the reason why we started our show too, is because we wanted to be able to catalog and document the stories of queer voices, queer creatives, people who are out there putting forth the work that deserve to be heard just as much as everybody else. Um, so in creating these pieces, it's obviously hard to connect with those individuals, maybe more so with your first work than with the Bible Belt Queers with the second piece. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like having to source that work from individuals? How do you even find, again, we're such a niche group within a niche group. It's like
Absolutely.
needles and haystacks. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, it was difficult to get the submissions, especially for the first one, especially when I had just started out doing this type of thing. I've never sourced collections like this. I
Hmm.
created events, so I was used to doing like the multi-step juggling plates that
Right.
kind of is making a collection like this. But it really started out as a few social media posts that I reposted. I think post-traumatically stressed feminist started out on Tumblr and Instagram.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And yep. And I created a little graphic in Canva talking about what I want, the deadlines, the scope of the project, and the email address that I created for people to send their submissions in.
Mhm.
I also created a GoFundMe at the same time. So I was promoting like both the submissions and please support this collection because it takes a lot for books to happen and
Yes.
to order all of the copies and the different copyright and hidden costs that go into like putting together a work of art.
Right.
So it was a long process. The biggest thing for me was to be flexible with my deadlines. So
Mhm.
I extended the deadline on both of these collections, I think a few times, just because I wanted to make sure that I really got a holistic like perspective and multiple different viewpoints. I wanted multiple different I wanted multiple different lived experiences for both
Absolutely.
collections. And if like I didn't feel like it spoke to a specific intersection, then
Mhm.
I kept pushing the deadline out a little bit to give more people time to submit their work. I wanted
Mhm.
to be flexible with folks. So the submissions for both of these collections were open for over a year.
Oh,
So
wow.
people got lots of reminders on like Tumblr and Instagram, on Facebook,
Mhm.
of the option to submit their work and also the option to support the collections. So
Wow.
yeah, it was a lot of learning how to be my own social media manager and like project promotion and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a lot of like self-taught marketing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, it was definitely worth it. And I'm, so excited and proud of both of these pieces. And I think the contributors are too.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that process. I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of creatives out there who would probably like to do the same thing, but don't even know where to begin. So that was a perfect like explanation
Yeah.
of like expect it to take at least a year.
Absolutely. Be flexible with your deadlines and yourself. And, if you need to put more specific calls for submissions out there, maybe that speak to the experience that you don't see represented in your work, then that's really helpful too. Just to encourage those folks to submit their work if they're thinking about it. So.
Yeah. And I think it's very admirable that you were patient enough with yourself and with your submissions to have that time to get that good content, the stuff that you're really looking for that really needs to be showcased. I don't think we could say the same for a lot of other producers or, like big box brands. They don't necessarily take that kind of time. It's more about the like financial give back at the end, as opposed to the community impact that you're trying to create.
Yeah, absolutely. The experiences that I was trying to represent in this collection needed to be like various and diverse. The Bible Belt queer experience is so many different types of experiences, but we all have like strands of connection within our experience of growing up queer in the Bible Belt, and with our experience being a traumatized feminist in our society today. There's so many multiple connections within those experiences, but the experiences are so diverse. So I think it's so important when you're trying to put out something that studies like these social patterns and problems and preserves queer history, that you are really doing it justice, and it's for the community.
Absolutely. What would you say would be some like overarching points or maybe some commonalities that you found within each piece of, like, again, you said you had 78 submissions for Bible Belt queers, 32 for PTS Feminist. Yes.
Yeah.
So, what were some like overarching points maybe in reviewing that their work? Obviously, it's a bunch of different kinds of pieces, but maybe there's some like common themes that you found in putting these works together.
Absolutely. There are definitely common themes in both collections and experiences. Thinking about Bible Belt queers specifically, there is so many of the pieces on it talk about home and what home means, and having to create an alternative because home isn't safe or home isn't loving or accepting. Being shunned and disowned by religious family members is a common theme. Trauma is a common theme. But so is resiliency and empowerment and empathy and embracing the small joys that we create in our lives. There's so many really hidden gems in the collection about being able to push through and find yourself and embrace yourself and love yourself despite not always being accepted and loved and valued in your childhood and growing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Post-traumatically stressed feminist, the common themes were various, but it really touched on the hidden systemic like issues that trauma survivors deal with. So you see sexism, you see racism, you see devaluing women and queer people, and there are these like hidden social issues that really affect trauma survivors, and also like feminism and really getting in touch with your feminism and using it as a source of empowerment to overcome trauma and heal. There's talk of post-traumatic growth and, not just like being in the trenches of our trauma, but like pushing forward and, creating alternatives. So I think that is kind of a common theme in both collections. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Of course.
Another question comes to mind specifically about post-traumatically stressed feminist. There is, in the work that we do in supporting our community, growing as feminists ourselves, one thing that we encounter a lot of having to counteract is like toxic white feminism, things of that nature. Was
Yeah.
that all kind of brought up amongst the pieces, as from some of the voices that were presented in that work of, the throes of toxic white feminism and how it's actually been like detrimental maybe to some stories?
I completely agree with you 100%. I think it has been detrimental. That particular like toxic white feminism is not addressed in the collection, but I was definitely very mindful of that while I was collecting work. And I
Absolutely.
wanted to make sure that if submissions like explored the intersection of race at all, I wanted to make sure that it was included so that it could be a more diverse experience, because I'm definitely cognizant I'm a white person putting these
Right.
collections together.
Right.
And my experience isn't the only experience with trauma. My experience isn't the only experience being a queer person in the Bible Belt. It was really important for me to collect like a multiplicity of experiences. So it wasn't discussed in this collection. This collection turned out to be actually pretty short,
Mhm.
but yeah, that is so important to think about and to consider when you're putting your work together, especially if you're a white editor. That's something you really need to be cognizant of, and to make sure you're not like reproducing, because that shit is toxic.
Yeah, exactly. And like giving credit where credit is due and doing
Absolutely.
doing the research, doing the work, making sure that you're aware of things before you're diving in 150%. We go through the same
Yeah.
processes in our show as well to make sure that we, it's because it's as white people, you know what I mean? It's going to be, it's things that we are constantly having to unlearn so that we can be
Absolutely.
better, not necessarily leaders for the community, but just better community members and better able to support our fellow humans.
Right.
Uh,
Accomplices and not allies.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, so we have these two wonderful pieces of work, and it is also quite obvious that we are coming out of the, hopefully the tail end, we hope, of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Is there any future plans to showcase this kind of work in person? I mean, I know your background is, I know, is in events and things, but I don't know if you've ever considered doing any kind of like an interactive exhibit or any kind of presentation in that way where we could go and see, or where, people could go and see these pieces in person.
I would love that. We were planning on that right when the pandemic hit, actually. I had a few book releases lined up because Bible Belt Queers was
Oh,
just released. And
oh,
in
wow.
my home state of Arkansas, we were doing one in Fayetteville at the Fayetteville Public Library two
Oh,
days before it was canceled because of the pandemic. It was like very early March.
oh my
So
gosh, I'm so sorry to hear
I
that.
know, I was
What
so
a
bummed, but
bummer.
because 5 or 6 contributors were going to drive in and read their work as well. So it wasn't just going to be me presenting, it was going to be like several of us, and we were all going to answer questions and like get to meet and chat with each other. And then like a pandemic. It was the saddest thing.
That
Um,
is
so
sad.
it was a huge bummer. I would love to be able to do something like this. It will definitely depend on the community support and support from allies and sponsorships from organizations that want to see us come and do this, because we would love to. Honestly, it is about time and resources and ability
Absolutely.
to travel and stay. So yeah, we would love the support of folks who have resources to put an event like this together, because yeah, that would be an amazing experience, I think, to be able to hear from various different contributors about their experience. Because
Mhm.
I did a little survey after the book, because I just wanted to get feedback from all of the
Mhm.
contributors about their experience and how they felt submitting to Bible Belt Queers and getting their work accepted. And the feedback was just so overwhelming
Mhm.
and wonderful. Yeah, I would really love to meet these people in person and be able to have, that real connection and live presentation of their work, because there's just so much work in here that is just
Mhm.
heartwarming. And yeah. Yeah, I would love that. That would be great.
I think it would be beautiful. And not only do you get to witness the artists like present their pieces, but to create that opportunity for whatever community or town, that you go and create that space in, where people who are seeking community themselves can go and hear from stories from people that, live in and, nearby wherever they might live as well. And that's like something for, like, we Bible Belt queers who came from communities with no community for,
Right.
queer community rather. And so, I mean, I didn't, just like you, I had to come to North Texas, well, to University of North Texas to really find that queer community. And it was, art exhibits and presentations and things like that, where I got to witness other people express their like true and authentic selves and be like, oh, like we could be friends. And then some of
Right.
them became my friends. And now I feel like I have this family. Like it's this whole thing. So yeah, I would love to see that happen for you. Would love to bring you back down to the North Texas area. Let me know. We can plan a thing, figure it out.
Awesome. I would love that.
That would be so fun.
It would be. We have some contributors in the area too, in Dallas and Fort Worth. And yeah.
Guess you have to come down here.
Right. Sounds perfect.
UNT, TWU, are you listening to the stream?
Right.
Come and hire us to do this
For sure.
exhibit. That would be
Absolutely.
great.
I would love that.
I
Yeah,
would
definitely.
too. Would love to see that. And then as far as, in addition to more events and things, do you see yourself releasing more works like this? Are you currently working on anything sequel wise that you can share? Anything of that
Yeah.
nature?
So I'm working on a few different collections actually, because I really just can't stop.
She can't stop, and they won't stop. They will not stop.
It's true. It's true. So I'm doing a little riff off of Bible Belt Queers. We are going to do a zine. So if anyone is interested
Yes.
in like, submitting to the zine, please do. The deadline is May 1st, but like I said, I'm a little flexible. So,
yes, sounds like
if you
it.
want to submit something, let me know. Let me know you're working on something, like when it'll be due, kind of thing. Or when it'll be finished, but it's going to be on COVID-19. So your experience being a queer person in a once in a lifetime pandemic.
Wow.
So please consider submitting your work. It will be a full color zine. All contributors will get a copy, of course. And we would love to hear about your experience being a Bible Belt queer during this time, and all of the intersections, that we experience as queer people in the Bible Belt, navigating this like health emergency, right? So
this health crisis for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in submitting for that, we're definitely still accepting submissions. The next book is going to be a collection that, like we talked about, celebrates those queer voices. So it's called Been Here, Been Queer, Millennial and Gen Z Changemakers in the Margins. So
that's gonna be so great.
This is my little card about it. I don't know if you can see,
I can. Yeah.
But we have an illustrator. So I'm working with a queer illustrator. His name is Taylor Mobley, and he is drawing portraits of the change makers that we choose to highlight in this collection. So if you know someone who is a young queer person in the margins doing important social movement work, please nominate them. You can do that. You can find it on my website under upcoming projects. You can nominate your friends, and we will reach out to folks. We're definitely going to be getting a wide representation of people who are working on a wide variety of social movement issues and projects. And anything art and community focused that is led and run by queer and trans people, we definitely want to highlight, because so often when we see like a book of queer people, queer history, it's the same people over and over again.
Right.
And we stand, of course, on the shoulders of really amazing giants who have done important work for our community. But like, there's so many people, young people doing community work now that it's like crucial that they are those people of this
At this
generation.
time, yes.
Absolutely. And they're not getting the support and the resources and the help that they need to do the work that needs
Mm,
to be done in our
mhm.
communities. So I think it's really, really important to highlight their work now and to celebrate them while they're still here, while they're alive with us,
Yes.
doing this work. So we know who to support, we know who to get in touch with when we are passionate about something, but there's someone in our community already doing this, you know?
Mhm.
So we're going to highlight the work of 50 LGBTQ folks, and they're each going to get their portrait done. They'll get a copy of their portrait, and it's going to be like a full color coffee table book with an illustration of all of these people and like a little interview snippet of them discussing their work and why it's important to them as a queer person, and how other people can get involved and how they got involved in activism, and you know, all of those important things. So yeah.
Wow, that is going to be so wonderful. I cannot
Thank
wait to read it. I cannot wait to submit some people for nominations.
Yay, please do, please do.
I've got plenty of people that I can think of and meet right off the top of the brain that would be
Awesome.
perfect fitting. So that we can drop it in the chat, can you rattle off again the due date and where
Yeah,
people can submit all of their nominees, and then as well as the application for or their work for the other piece that you mentioned earlier as well?
sure. So Bible Belt Queers zine is the deadline is May 1st. And the email address is biblebeltqueerszine@gmail.com.
Okay,
And you
great.
can
Perfect.
send your work in there. You can get updates from my Instagram. It's PTSFeminist. And
Mhm.
the Been Here collection, you can get updates from there too. You can go to my website, ptsfeminist.com, and click on upcoming collections, and you can
Perfect.
hear all about Been Here, Been Queer, the collection. You can find the fundraising page if you're interested in supporting that collection, because we will definitely need the help to make this collection come alive so that we can pay our illustrator and make sure we're compensating queer folks for their work and printing collections and or printing copies of the collection and all of that good stuff. So yeah, you can support it, so nominate folks, and there isn't really a deadline for that one yet because we're
Okay.
still chugging along with it in the beginning stages of collecting those submissions. So probably by the end of the year, if you can get the
Mm,
sooner you nominate folks, the better
right.
is great, because then we'll have time to illustrate them. You know, these
Get everything
collections
together.
usually take about 2 years each, and
Wow.
um, so yeah, we're about 6 months or so into this one. So we got about a year and a half. So the sooner you get your stuff in, the better. It gives us more time
Absolutely.
to illustrate, and we get really quality interviews from folks and make sure we're doing the collection justice by representing a multiplicity of perspectives. So,
Absolutely. And if you're tuning in right now and you're watching along with us and you think that maybe you don't qualify, I am here to tell you that you do. And
you
so,
do it.
yes, all stories are important and valid. Our existence as humans should be well documented,
Absolutely.
especially as the queer community. We're normally erased when it comes to historical documentation. And this is our opportunity to document it as it's happening right now through your efforts, which I think is a really lovely and admirable thing. And you truly are, y'all, you and I'm assuming there is some sort of a team now, hopefully helping you out with this work. But it's very inspiring and really admirable. And I'm very impressed and grateful for your
Thank
efforts.
you.
Truly, madly,
Thank you.
deeply.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Of course. So, speaking of being, together and here in community and whatnot, we are obviously brought here together today under the guise of Rise Market, a wonderful virtual
Yes.
marketplace for the queer and BIPOC community as well. So, can you tell me a little bit how you got involved with the market? What can we find from your vendor space on said market? Like, what brought you to Rise?
Sure, absolutely. So I found Rise on Instagram. So I saw that that space was being created, and I was like, I definitely need in on that,
Mhm.
because all of my art is very queer
Yes.
and very feminist.
Yes.
I'm all about the subversive art, the very in your face art. I think it is important that we are visible and loud and proud.
Yes.
And I think that could have really helped so many of us when we were younger because we didn't see that. So I think so many of us are, trying to live that these days. But that's really what my art is all about is feminist and queerness and politicalness and all of that like wrapped into one. So I have lots of different types of art. You can find both of my collections on there, Bible Belt Queers and Post Traumatically Stressed Feminist, but
Amazing.
also lots of prints and stickers and magnets and pins and resin art and literally everything. I just did these earrings, some little
Oh,
Medusa earrings with.
yes. I saw you post these the other day on Instagram. I thought they were so cool.
Thank you. So there's lots of different stuff there. You can find, yeah, you can find a little bit of everything. So if you're in the market for queer and feminist art, definitely check out my vendor page on Rice Market.
Yeah, absolutely. And get you a copy of both works to
Yeah,
hold you over until these next ones come out in the meantime.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I've got one more question for you before we wrap up today's show. And I want to thank you again for being able to sit down with me. It's really been a pleasure to get to know you and talk more about your work. I need to click the pay button on my copies as well and get my own copies of these works. But I wanted to ask, so you've managed to connect with countless individuals. You've put together all of these voices who come from different intersectionalities, what some may having in common with you as well. Through all of this work and these efforts that you've put forth to make these pieces, what do you think is the greatest thing that you've learned about yourself from doing this effort and from hearing these other stories?
That is such a good question. You know,
Thank you.
I think that I'm capable of more than I thought I was,
Mm-hmm.
and there we can create beautiful things out of the shitty things that have happened to us. I
Exactly.
think so many of us carry trauma in some capacity, but I think you really can work through that. It's some of that like with creative endeavors and pursuits. Like art is such a healer,
Mhm.
and I think that is so you know so important, and something that I really kind of clung onto is to use art as a way to like get those experiences out and let other people know that they're not alone. So yeah, I think I've just learned that I'm capable of more than I thought and can create beautiful and powerful things.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you learned that because it is 100%
Thank
too.
you.
You've truly, truly done that in your work. Well, thank you so much, Darcy, for joining me today. It's been such a nice time getting to talk about your work. Before we go, could you go ahead and rattle off one more time where our listeners can, and our streamers, I guess today can find you, can engage with your work, follow you on social media, things of that nature.
Absolutely. You can find my work at ptsfeminist.com, and I am on social media at ptsfeminist. So on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, you can find me there.
Amazing. And then, of course, you can also shop all of your works today on risemarket.live as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yes, it was such a great time. And hopefully, we'll get to bring you
That
down
would
to
be
the North
awesome.
Texas area and bring your work back. That would be really fun.
I would love that. That would be wonderful. I get to connect with some old friends and meet new Bible
Yeah,
Belt queers folks.
that's
So
what I'm saying.
I love it.
Great deal. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to our Rise Market Queer Creatives on Rise. We've had such a great time sharing this interview with you today, and we will see you next month for our interview with the owner of Boy Package. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we will talk to you next month. Okay, thanks. Bye.